Absolutely immaculate timing, because as you join us in the 90-degree heat here at Monza, and you see Nelson Piquet from pole position, followed by Nigel Mansell, leading round the parade lap before the start of this 51-lap, 185-mile race, which is going to be long and grueling. You can see that the conditions are absolutely perfect.
Yes, very hot indeed for the drivers. It's going to be a long, tough race. And here they are on the warm-up lap, going round the Lesmo corners. And the story was once again domination of practice and qualifying by the two Williams Hondas. Piquet this time out-qualified Nigel Mansell and is in fact driving their version of an active suspension car. Similar in principle, but not that similar in the way it's conducted as to the Lotus, who have been running this active suspension system all season. And the only person to get near the Williams Hondas in practice was Gerhard Berger in his Ferrari. So into the second chicane, or rather the back chicane, and then away down quite a long straight. And then into the Parabolica, which is the last corner, taken in third gear. And there's Piquet slowing it down now, trying to get the field bunched up behind him.
Let us hope there is going to be no repetition of the 3 starts at Austria here at Monza. The circuit, of course, is much wider, but after they have gone away from the start, they go into the chicane, the Rettifilo chicane, and whoever gets there first, and of course it should be Nelson Piquet, will have a big advantage with a clear lap in front of him. And out of the Parabolica, at this most historic of all Grand Prix circuits, comes the proud sight of the two Williams Hondas, soon to be Williams Judds in 1988, followed by the Scarlet Ferrari of Gerhard Berger on the right, third on the grid. Ayrton Senna very happy with the suspension of the Lotus Honda, and behind Ayrton Senna, fifth on the grid, the world champion Alain Prost. So, as James has said, it's going to be a very grueling race, and it's going to be very tough for fuel consumption too. Nigel Mansell is alleged to be at a slight disadvantage there, because the consumption of Piquet's car should be better. Waiting now for the tail-enders to come up into position before Roland Brunscheider, the Belgian starter, presses that vital button to change the red to green when the race will be on, with a new driver, Franco Ferrini, in the second Osella, starting 26th and last. Yellow flags being waved furiously, and there you see the red flag. So for some reason, and I'm watching the officials start across, it's the Brabham of Riccardo Patrese, who has got some sort of a problem. I suspect it's a turbo fire, but with the yellows still waving and with the start aborted, but thank heavens before there was any motion and problems, therefore, it's obvious that there will have to be another parade lap, and it's not inconceivable, that being so, that they might be allowed to top up with fuel, because, as I said, fuel consumption is marginal here, and even one extra lap could make all the difference. Riccardo Patrese there, who is hotly tipped, and even more hotly tipped here at Monza, for the second seat in the Williams team, in major problems with his Brabham.
Yes, and that was good work and a quick response by the starter and the start line marshals to spot that Patrese was in trouble, because a stalled or stricken car that doesn't move in the middle of the grid like that can be an extremely dangerous hazard, because the cars following, the cars from behind, by the time they get there from the back of the grid, are doing well over 100 miles an hour, and it's very difficult for the drivers at the back to see that there is a stationary car, because of course their view is blocked by the cars in front of them. So they have aborted a potentially very dangerous situation.
That's Michele Alboreto being appraised of the situation. And on the left, in the glasses with the beard, you saw the Bosch technician connecting up his electrical apparatus to the BMW engine of Patrese Brabham. And there's a sign that there's a sight that we certainly do not want to see at this stage. People swarming all over the grid, which indicates that there's obviously going to be some delay before the Italian Grand Prix round 11 of the World Championship Series gets away. Well, better that than what happened in Austria, where first of all there was a start where several cars were badly damaged, then another start where even more cars were badly damaged, then a third start before the race got away. That's Gerhard Berger, who is happily totally over the stomach problems that were bothering him in Austria. And Berger is, if anything, establishing some ascendancy in the Ferrari team over his long-established Italian teammate, Michele Alboreto, because the young Austrian has been consistently faster than Michele, although with Alboreto 8th on the grid for the start of this race, the reason was not Alboreto, the reason was a problem with the car. And although the Ferraris have been improving race by race, as you look at world champion Alain Prost sitting phlegmatically in his car, they seem not to be right yet. The team managers are now consulting on the start line with the FISA starter. It's 5 minutes, I think. There's a 5-minute board being held up that I can see. It's got 5 on the reverse. Yes, it's got 5 on the other side too. And that's not that's not Ayrton Senna crouching lower in the cockpit. It was the cockpit surround on his Lotus being lifted, possibly to increase ventilation for the Brazilian, who must be very hot now, but he's going to be a darn sight hotter. And already you see the tyre warmers have come out. The electrically heated tyre warmers have gone on to Prost's car to keep the tyres at working temperature. Bernie Ecclestone leans over Patrese's car to ask him what the problem is. That's the man who not only has been responsible for Formula One being in its present state of efficiency, but is now one of the top men in FISA responsible for the commercial aspects of all the major formulae in motorsport. And I wish I could tell you what the problem with Patrese's car was, and I hope that they're using the past tense is correct, and whatever it was has been corrected. I suspect from the way the Bosch technician doubled out and connected up his apparatus, he was going to take some immediate readings. It couldn't have been a turbo problem because the car would have been wheeled off the grid, and Patrese would undoubtedly have been slotted into the spare car and would have had to start in that case from the pit lane. It might just have been a stalled engine. Who knows? I don't at the moment. So 26 starters still, and I confirm that I mentioned very quickly earlier on that Franco Farini, the ex-Italian, 3 minutes to go, Formula 3 champion, is having his first Grand Prix drive in the second of the now rather aged Osella cars. And his teammate, of course, is young Alex Cathy, who made his Grand Prix debut here at Monza exactly 1 year ago. Farini is Swiss-born, and we had hoped that Emanuele Pirro, the Italian ex-Formula 3000 and Formula 3 driver, would be competing in a middle bridge Benetton Megatron, but because of an interpretation of the rules, the unfortunate John McDonald, who made the entry, has had to go back to Britain, and it looks as though Pirro is not only not going to start here, but he's not going to start at any Grand Prix this year. Frank Turney is the man with the clipboard standing beside Nelson Piquet's actively suspended Williams Honda. The main difference between the active suspension systems of the pioneering Lotus Honda and the revised Williams Honda is that the Williams car has essentially a much simpler system, which is much more hydraulics oriented than the Lotus, which is much more electronics oriented. The permutation of things that can be done to the Lotus is far greater, but it's significant that in his first trial at a race circuit for a Grand Prix in an actively suspended car. Nelson Piquet has opted to start the race in it, expressing great confidence in its handling capabilities. And that is Gerhard Berger. And an advantage, as I mentioned briefly earlier on, that Piquet could have is that the active suspension beneficially affects the fuel consumption, and Nigel Mansell may have a problem later in the race. The lap counter is still showing 51, so fuel consumption is going to be even more of a problem than it was going to be before, because they are still going to have another parade lap. That's Ferrari in the background. The grid is being cleared. Of course, it's getting hotter and hotter all the time, well over 90 degrees now. You can see the heat haze coming up from the circuit. Less than 30 seconds to go as you look through the camera of Satoru Nakajima's Lotus Honda.
Yes, we hope we get some good action shots. He's well placed for a good view, being in the back middle of the grid. Chicane, likely to be quite a fight under braking for that first corner. And the lap counter has now been moved to 50 laps to go, so it is now a 50-lap race. They've taken one lap off to compensate for having to do this extra parade lap. In this race, we expect tyres to be quite marginal. In the warm-up this morning, Nelson Piquet blistered a rear. I don't anticipate that he'll do that in the race, having been alerted to the danger of doing that, but he will have to take it as carefully as he possibly can in the first 10 laps. He won't want to be pushed too hard, and needless to say, the pursuers will be trying to push the Williamses along as hard as they can to get them to blister tyres. Most teams are hoping to get away with just one tyre stop, but there's a possibility that those who are a little bit hard on tyres could have to stop twice. So, having gone through the Lesmos, coming down to the back chicane, taken in third gear, pretty quick, this chicane. Of course, as Murray just said, it's getting hotter and hotter all the time. The ambient temperature of the track will be steadily rising as we get the hottest part of the day, and this, of course, will put just that little bit more heat into the tyres, which could prove significant. They're weaving away, trying to get their tyres warmed up to working temperature, as close to it as they can. The back of the picture there is Nakajima, from whose car we hope to have some good shots during the opening few laps, when the field's all nicely bunched up. So Nelson Piquet slowing it right down through the parabolica. Wants the field to arrive as together as possible, and in fact, by reducing the race distance by one lap, they have effectively given the teams slightly more fuel, because of course they don't use anything like the amount doing a slow parade lap like that as they do under full racing conditions.
Well strung out. This is a very worrying time for the men at the front, Piquet and Mansell, because they have to select first gear to get away at exactly the right moment so as not to drag the clutch. And there were several teams who had the gearbox and transmission away from the engine after the warm-up in order to check or change clutches this morning. You see, Piquet and Mansell are already in position, as are the first 10 rows or so, and still the tail enders, particularly Ferrari, still weaving away at the back. are not yet in position. This is a very long delayed start for the people at the front and a real character test for the starter. Okay this time. And Mansell surges away. Nigel Mansell went away into the lead as they went into the Rettifilo, but already Nelson Piquet has taken the lead. Berger is third, Prost is fourth, Boutsen is fifth, and Ayrton Senna is sixth as they thread their way through this tricky series of bends, and nobody has gone into the sand.
It's a very serious traffic jam towards the back of the field then. They virtually had to come to a halt. And it was interesting at the start then because Nelson Piquet was very, very slow to react to the green light and made quite a tardy start. Mansell got his car moving noticeably before, and yet Piquet was still able to outpower Mansell to the first corner. So Nelson Piquet leads, Mansell second, and certainly in practice the speed trap times of Piquet's car powering across the start-finish line were noticeably faster than those of Nigel Mansell, which does suggest that his engine's got a bit more power, and that certainly looked like it at the start then.
Piquet, Mansell, Berger, Prost as they went through the Ascari bend and then down to the Parabolica. And here they come, Nelson Piquet leading, then it's Nigel Mansell, there's Berger, there is Boutsen, there is Prost, Ayrton Senna, Michele Alboreto well up and round the Parabolica. They take that at about 170 miles an hour. They're coming through to complete lap one, and it's Piquet, Mansell, Berger, Boutsen, then a gap. Prost is fifth, and Senna is sixth. And an absolute cacophony of sound with Gerhard Berger in third position, closing up on Nigel Mansell, and Piquet is making a break for it. Berger is all over the back of Nigel Mansell's Williams in second place, and in fourth position, Boutsen in the Benetton is right with Berger, who's going for second position now, but Mansell closes the door. That is the Roger series of bends. Second side of Monza, Boutsen is through, and it is second place. Boutsen up into second place, fantastic.
And that was pretty hairy stuff there. Mansell, in fending off Berger, arrived too quickly at the chicane, swung wide, and Berger, with the enthusiasm of a Ferrari driver in front of his home crowd, was a little bit over-enthusiastic then, and just gave Mansell a bit of a biff, but he's up to third place now. So Berger third, but that allowed Boutsen a nice little gap to nip through into second place. So Mansell has dropped back, courtesy really of his own mistake then, and just arriving a little bit too quickly, as Prost is now challenging Nigel Mansell. So Piquet will be quite pleased with that. He's comfortable at the front. Remember, the two Williams drivers particularly are going to have to be very kind to their rear tyres in the early laps. They don't want to be pressed.
And Nelson Piquet now leads by 2 seconds from Thierry Boutsen, who with that masterly bit of opportunistic driving moved up. Nigel Mansell is down. There is Boutsen second, Berger third, Mansell fourth, Prost is in fifth place, Senna is sixth, and Nigel Mansell already looks as though he is either deliberately pacing himself or in early trouble, because he's almost out of touch now. Look at him. There goes Boutsen second, Berger third, Mansell fourth, Prost fifth, Senna in sixth position, and Alboreto in seventh place, who's come up a place on the grid because he started in eighth position. But Boutsen looks to me as though he is starting to catch Nelson Piquet, and as I said earlier on, Boutsen was supremely confident when I spoke to him just before the race. He said the handling of the Benetton, which is absolutely right for this sort of circuit, was superlatively good. The Ford power seems to be right. There's Berger third. Now you see Prost in fifth position with Senna there in sixth place right behind him. is just behind Mansell in 4th position. They're coming out now of the parabolica across the line. It's Piquet. The gap between Piquet and Boutsen has been reduced to 1.6 seconds. The Rettifilo, Piquet, Boutsen, Berger 3rd, Mansell 4th, Prost 5th, Senna 6th, Alboreto 7th, Johansson is 8th, and Farby in the second peloton is in 9th position. So this is lap 4 in this 50-lap race. And Mansell is now leading a train of cars, and I think he is delaying them. It's giving the people in front of him the chance to pull away, the people in front of him being Piquet, Boutsen and Berger. So we have 3 different constructors in the first 3 places. There's Teo Farby. And here is the leader. And that is Nakajima, who looks as though his race is completed on lap 4. Satoru Nakajima off and in the sand trap, and he's going to find it very difficult indeed to get out of that.
Yes, they don't come out of that sand very easily. Of course, you let the clutch out, spin the wheels, and they just dig in. But that's rather a shame, so we won't have any on-board shots from in the car if we've lost Nakajima this soon.
I've said before that you put a camera on a car and it immediately hits trouble. Well, here's Piquet going well, and now the gap between Piquet and Boutsen in second place is the same as it was before. As you look at the peloton, and now Berger 3rd. There's Mansell 4th, Prost 5th with Senna 6th right behind him. Alboreto in 7th place in the Ferrari has dropped back a bit. This is the Curva Grande. They're doing about, as they exit it, they build up to about 185 miles an hour to the Rosia, which is the second chicane on this circuit at Monza before they come to the 3rd one, the Ascari bend. Now there are the first 3. Somebody's lost a part of the side pod. It looks to me like part of a Brabham side pod, but we'll take a check on that. As the 2nd and 3rd then, Boutsen and Berger, followed by Mansell 4th. There is Senna harrying Prost, who is in 5th position, and under the bridge of the banked circuit and down to the Ascari bend goes Piquet. Berger 3rd, Mansell 4th, Senna coming up into 5th place ahead of Prost. So Senna has moved up a place. There is Michele Alboreto in the 2nd Ferrari, who is 7th. Down to the parabolica, they're doing 195 miles an hour as they approach that bend. And Berger is the quickest man, I think, on the top. No, Boutsen, 130.428 compared with the lap record, 128.1 held by Teo Farby. And we are now on lap 6 of this 50-lap race. And leading the normally aspirated race at the moment is Philippe Alliot.
And Johansson was having a go there at Alboreto, but decided to sit back and wait for another opportunity. The leading 8 or 9 cars seem pretty evenly matched. Piquet leading by just over 2 seconds, and that gap has been fairly static to Boutsen. So the field at the moment not really stringing out. Prost seems to be going backwards. I think just get a suspicion that maybe his engine's a little bit down on power. He seems to be struggling a little bit on the straights. But Johansson's going very, very well indeed in the 2nd McLaren.
Yes, Stefan Johansson chasing Alboreto, who is behind Prost. And there they are, coming through on the 6th lap. Boutsen will be praying for reliability. He said he thought he would be all right in this race. There is Mansell 4th, Senna in 5th position, Prost in 6th place, Alboreto number 27 in 7th position, and the gap now, as Piquet goes through and completes the lap ahead of Boutsen, is 2.38 seconds. So Nelson Piquet is extending his lead. The man who is leading the World Championship as Berger and Mansell go through the Rettifilo. There's a lot of curb bashing here at Monza, people chopping the corners short to try to save a hundredth of a second or so. And Piquet seems to be very happy indeed. Nakajima has rejoined the race, but Patrese has gone missing. Ricardo Patrese seems to have disappeared, and that, of course, is the man who had trouble at the first start. And now Alboreto is right with Prost, and Prost, of course, is in 6th position. There they are, the battle for 6th. Alboreto 7th.
Yes, Prost does seem to be going backwards at the moment. In respect to the others, Piquet continues to lead. I'm sure he's not in a hurry at the moment. Be well aware of the tyre problem they had this morning when they blistered a rear tyre. And until they've got a good 10 laps or so under his belt, he won't really be giving it everything, because of course the tyres are at their most vulnerable when they're very new, because there's more rubber, so you've got a greater heat build up, and then once there's a little bit of rubber off them, the car by then is lighter as well, so it's used a bit of fuel, so the stress for the tyre is not nearly so great. Using the curbs quite a lot. Of course, it can help the handling of the car, it helps get the background. 29.2 for Nigel Mansell. So the pace up front is pretty fast and furious. Not very far from the lap record, and remember they've got a lot of fuel on board still.
It's very interesting that Nigel is now the fastest on the course, because it was Nelson Piquet with 1:29.5. Nigel Mansell's just gone round 3/10 of a second faster. That may not sound very much quicker, but every 100th is going to count in this race. And that fastest lap now, Nigel Mansell, 1:29.2, is just 1.2 seconds outside the lap record.
And there is Alberto's Ferrari. It's back to you. And that side pod we saw being removed from the track was probably his, because he has got a naked radiator on one side of his car. And Johansson has now made it past Alain Prost. So Prost is obviously in a bit of trouble. My suspicion once again will be that it's a down-on-power engine. They've had a lot of trouble this year, McLaren, with their Porsche engines. So there you've got a good view of Alboreto's naked radiator there. Now this may affect the cooling of Alboreto's car, and cooling will be critical today because of this heat. And with the side pod gone, of course, if the airflow through the radiator isn't so good, then of course it could overheat the engine.
We are now on lap 9. The race order is Nelson Piquet leading Thierry Boutsen by some 2.4 seconds and looking very comfortable with it. In 3rd place is Gerhard. Berger. Nigel Mansell is in 4th place. Ayrton Senna is in 5th place, and in 6th position is Piquet Alboreto ahead of Stefan Johansson. Then it is Theo Fabi, and the unfortunate Alain Prost is dropping back all the time. He had a lot of trouble in practice, as James just said, and Johansson will really be pushing hard, because don't forget, he's lost his place in the McLaren team, and he will be all out to establish that he's good enough for a position, hopefully with Benetton. So there is Piquet leading, Boutsen looking closer, Berger in 3rd position, Nigel Mansell is still 4th, there is Vincenzo who is soaring, so it looks as though the second Brabham is in trouble. Ayrton Senna just going past there in 5th place. Then you should see the Scarlet Ferrari, there it is, of Michele Alboreto 6th. That was Johansson in 7th place, and the leaders are now on their 10th lap, 1/5 distance. Berger does not seem to be able to do anything about Boutsen. Boutsen doesn't seem to be able to do anything about Piquet. The gap, as you can see, to prove me wrong, is reduced a bit.
Yes, and Alain Prost is clearly in trouble. He's lapping some 6 or 7 seconds slower than the leading people, and whatever his problem is, it would appear to be getting worse. And as I say, it must surely be a down-on-power engine. If there's anything else, you'd probably come in and have something done about it, but there's not a lot you can do about a down-on-power engine in the normal way, so he will
saw Nakajima go through there. Now there is Piquet, the leader. There is Boutsen. There is Berger. And everybody here who is of Italian extraction will be watching that Ferrari with their fingers crossed. Berger has actually lasted longer here at Monza than he lasted either in Austria or in Hungary. And Boutsen is definitely closing the gap between himself and Nelson Piquet. Now, whether that's because Boutsen has decided to take a chance and turn up the boost, I don't know. But there he is, and the gap now is 1.2 seconds. As Berger goes up to lap the Osella. Berger in third position. Thierry Boutsen in the background in the green Benetton, with Berger holding him in third position, and Nigel Mansell there in fourth place, and Senna in fifth. Now look for Alboretto's Ferrari 6. There it is, going through the Rettifilo. But the big news at the moment, with the bare radiator of Alboretto's Ferrari showing, the big news is that Boutsen is definitely catching the leader, and Prost is coming into the pits. Alain Prost coming into the pits on the 11th lap out of 50, with Berger holding station in third place, Boutsen catching the race leader. And let's look for the proof of it as Piquet comes up to lap the second Osella, that of Alex Caffey, who has got a puff of smoke coming from his engine. He's in 17th position. You can see in the top right corner that Alain Prost is in the pits. There goes Mansell through. There is Senna in 5th position. That is Michele Alboretto 6th. Up comes the engine cover of Prost McLaren. Piquet has lapped Nakajima, of course, back into the race, and Boutsen is coming up fast. Now, the gap on the previous lap, which was lap 10, was 1.2 seconds. The gap between Boutsen and Piquet now is, well, it's 1.1 seconds. But, happily for him, Boutsen has got past Nakajima. You see in the top right corner the imperturbable but very unhappy, I am sure, Alain Prost, who has been having big behind-the-scenes arguments with the Bosch technicians who are responsible for the engine management system of his TAG turbo engine, which he will be losing at the end of this season. Not at all happy, Prost. Well, there's Mansell fourth. He can't be too pleased with things either, because it looks to me as though Senna is getting closer. There is Alboretto in sixth, but all the time, Thierry Boutsen, number 20, the man from Brussels in his 67th Grand Prix, is catching race leader, World Championship leader, Nelson Piquet. Here we go. 1.2 seconds, then 1.1 seconds. Out of the parabolica, down the start and finish straight, on towards the Rettifilo. And that is the Rettifilo, that artificial chicane that was put in to slow down the Curva Grande. And here they come out of the parabolica, down the start and finish straight. And the gap as Piquet goes through is 1.7 seconds. Piquet has got the message, probably from Patrick Head on his radio. He gets ahead of Ivan Capelli, who is in 20th position in his 3.5-litre Miami Blue March, I understand the colour is. And the man who is lapping the 3.5-litre class now is Philippe Alliot, who is in 17th place ahead of Streff, who is 18th. Jonathan Palmer is 19th, Capelli is 20th, and it's a terrific scrap in the 3.5-litre category, as it is at the front of the race proper, with Piquet being caught by Boutsen.
Yes, as usual, they're really going for it, the 3.5-litre group, and that nearly allowed Boutsen, well, it allowed him to get pretty close to Piquet, but of course he still had one car to pass. So the race settles down again with the two leaders. Well, look at those 3.5-litre boys going for it. That's Capelli, the March. And having got clear of the traffic, Boutsen probably just lost a little bit of ground there. Mansell has now got 3.5 meters in front of him to hold him up. The two Lotus Hondas circulating together, but probably not for very long. And Senna goes away from his teammate.
Right, deep breath as the leaders have completed 13 laps. And it's Nelson Piquet leading Boutsen. There is Berger third, Mansell in fourth position. In fifth position, it is Ayrton Senna. In sixth place is still Michele Alboreto, and there is the Italian, with yet more of the side pod flapping on the left-hand side of the car, and I'm wondering if the black flag might be shown to him. 2.5 seconds between Piquet and Boutsen, with Berger there in third position, and Mansell there in fourth, who it looks to me as though he's starting to close on the Ferrari.
Yes, and Alain Prost has in fact just rejoined the race, but he's lost a good couple of laps in the pit. And Mansell definitely closing up on Berger.
Yes, and my lap scorer, Mike Knudsen, has just passed me a cynical note saying Michele Alboreto in a Ferrari, given the black flag at Monza. Well, who knows? Stranger things have happened, maybe not much, but there goes Piquet now, and as he goes down to the Rettifilo, he's undoubtedly extending his lead because it is now 3.2 seconds over Thierry Boutsen. The Belgian is slowing or being slowed by traffic, and Mansell, as you can see, there he is in fourth position, has closed the gap between himself and Gerhard Berger. There is now 0.75 seconds between Mansell in fourth place and Berger in fifth. Senna is 4 seconds behind Mansell in fifth position, and there's the Englishman catching the Austrian Gerhard Berger. Stefan Johansson is in sixth place, and the Zach speeds are in 10th and 11th places, with Martin Brundle in 11th place and Alboreto into the pits for something which is obviously not a tyre stop, because as you can see, there is no furious activity around the wheels of the Ferrari. Another retirement question mark for the unfortunate Michele Alboreto.
Yes.
Here is Mansell following Boutsen and pulling away from Berger there. Number 28 with the yellow flashes on his Ferrari. Gerhard Berger, number 28, who's had 3 fourth places this year. Now round the Ascari bends, you see them going down towards us. And Boutsen, knowing that Mansell is right behind him, with the Williams Honda weaving under braking and pulling away from the Ferrari. Now the fastest lap, Nelson Piquet, 1:28.94. And Mansell going up alongside Boutsen and trying to go through. He won't get through there, that is absolutely certain. But he's ideally situated to try and get past Thierry Boutsen as they go round the curve of Grandi, which is where Michele Alboreto went off in practice yesterday, severely damaging the front suspension of his Ferrari. Now Mansell is in an ideal position to pass, and he's going for it, and he's through. Nigel Mansell on lap 19 out of 50 moves up into second place behind his teammate Nelson Piquet by passing Thierry Boutsen, who has got Gerhard Berger now right behind him. And it's clear to me that the Benetton Ford is tiring, because Berger has made up a lot of space, and I don't think it's going to be all that long before the Ferrari is up into third position, because there is Boutsen, and there is Ayrton Senna, who, as usual, is going round quickly and reliably, not quickly enough, but reliably enough to be up at the front, and if any of the cars in front of him drop out, which is very likely, Ayrton Senna will once more be in a position to benefit from the reliability of the Lotus Honda combination.
Well, sadly, it looks for the moment as if we're back in an all too familiar situation of it being having a 2-horse race between the two Williams drivers, and Nelson Piquet Piquet, no doubt well informed that Mansell was starting to make a move behind, put in another fastest lap, even quicker, so he is responding. He is now, well, the race starts with between the two Williamses, with Piquet with just about a 10-second advantage, so we'll watch the gap very carefully.
And Stefan Johansson, who was in 6th position, has gone into the pits and now out of them. So that was obviously for a tyre change. I say obviously because I couldn't see it. We're right at the other end of the pits here at Monza, and it's a very long pit lane. And there is Nigel Mansell. Boutsen, 3rd. Berger, 4th. Senna in 5th position. Stefan Johansson was 6th, and that means to say that Theo Fabi in the 2nd Benetton has moved up into the points, as towards us comes the distinctive Williams Honda. Now, is the gap between Nelson Piquet, as you look at Senna in 5th position, and Nigel Mansell, who is 2nd, going to come down? It was 9.9 seconds on the previous lap. Mansell has got a clear circuit in front of him. It is up to 10.5 seconds. Piquet is increasing his lead as you look at Berger, followed by Senna, who is in 5th position, going through the Rettifilo up to the 170-mile-an-hour Curva Grande. And from now on, Nelson Piquet is going to start to benefit even more from the fact that he has that new active suspension on his car, because it's going to give him a benefit on fuel consumption. Into the pits comes a Benetton in the top right corner. In 10th position at the moment is Martin Brundle in the Zach Speed. He's behind his teammate, Christian Danner, but Brundle very, very much happier than he was in practice. Now, the 3.5 litre category on lap 21 is being led by Philippe Alliot, who is 15th overall. In 2nd position in the 3.5 litre category is Philippe Streff, who is 17th behind Nakajima, overall that is. And 3rd position in the category is Ivan Capelli, and Jonathan Palmer, who started fastest on the grid in the 3.5 litre class, is currently in 4th place in the class and 19th overall. And now this is lap 21, and Piquet has completed the 21st lap. He's on to his 22nd. Now, Mansell, we missed Mansell, there he is, into the pits. Apologies for that. Mansell slid into the pits unobserved, and the race order on lap 22 then is Nelson Piquet leading Thierry Boutsen by 9.6 seconds. Gerhard Berger is in 3rd position. Ayrton Senna is in 4th place, and Nigel Mansell, having made a tyre change, observe that, tyres, Nigel Mansell on lap 21, so we can expect him to go the rest of the race on the set of tyres that he's using, is in 5th position, ahead of Stefan Johansson, who is in 6th place. Theo Fabi is in 7th position, and the leader has lapped everybody up to about 11th position.
Yes, I think that was good tactics by Mansell to come in early for tyres, get the fresh set on, to help him in his chase of Piquet. Remember, the newer the tyres, the better they perform. So you'll have the advantage of that fresh rubber. And Nelson Piquet, his progress has been slightly held up as he's been fighting his way through quite a large gaggle of back markers. And he leads Boutsen by some 10 seconds.
Not very far off half distance as you look at Boutsen, Senna and Berger in 2nd, 3rd and 4th places. And significant there is the fact that Ayrton Senna is challenging as you look at the two Ligiers, over which there has been so much wrangling in the practice session over their Megatron engines. And Senna now is up, and he is ahead of Boutsen. So on lap 23 out of 50, approaching half distance. The brilliant Brazilian double Grand Prix winner in 1987, Ayrton Senna, has clawed his way through the field. He's got ahead of Mansell, of course, who is now down in 5th position by virtue of his tyre stop. He got ahead of Berger, he got ahead of Boutsen, and he's now pulling away from Boutsen and Berger. He's in 2nd position as you look at the leader. Now look down the course for the yellow car. That was the Zaxby. There is Ghinzani in the Ligier, followed by Arnoux in the Ligier. There is 2nd place man Ayrton Senna on his 23rd lap, followed by 4th man Boutsen. The Scarlet Ferrari of Berger is 5th. And I will give you the gap between Nelson Piquet, race leader on lap 24, and the 2nd place car of Ayrton Senna. It is 12.1 seconds.
And Boutsen and Berger went for the pits then. So Senna now on his own, and Boutsen, and they get away absolutely in line astern. And a tremendous fight out of the pits to get to that first chicane. And there we are, that's the result, won by Boutsen, but they're sliding around a lot on the cold tyres. And Boutsen nearly made a mess of that. So they raced into the pits and they continued to race out of them.
And thanks to that masterly departure, Thierry Boutsen is now in 4th position, with Berger fighting very hard indeed. As James has pointed out, although their tyres have been preheated, they will still not quite be at racing temperature. But Boutsen made it, and on lap 25, 1 lap short of half distance, it is Nelson Piquet in the lead from Ayrton Senna in 2nd position. And Nigel Mansell has just broken the lap record.
Yes, a 1:27.4, which has really smashed it, and that's nearly over a second past anyone else. And Nelson Piquet is now in the pits. There is Nelson Piquet making his stop, which looked a bit of a slow one. And that won't please the Brazilians one little bit. So he will have lost time on the road to Mansell, courtesy of that. And in fact, now they are together, so the battle of the Williams is really joined, because Piquet, all his lead over Mansell was lost in the pits. And remember, Mansell has the warmed-up tyres on and will now be... And certainly the Williams team did a better job than Nigel Mansell. There they are with Piquet in front. Remember, on the colder tyres, and Mansell will be very anxious to pass him now while he's got the tyre advantage before Piquet gets his new ones warmed up. I'm sure Piquet will be using his boost button to defend his position.
And I'm sure that Nigel Mansell will be using his to attack. And this is the half distance, lap 25. Ayrton Senna leads in 2nd position. There he is, Nelson Piquet in 3rd position. Just behind him is Nigel Mansell. Both of them have changed their tyres. And now we're seeing a battle royal between the two arch rivals in the Williams team, with Piquet defending his position, moving across to the right, knowing that it is Nigel Mansell, the man who he would most like to beat in the Italian Grand Prix, who is there behind him. And Ayrton Senna has now completed 25 laps. He's leading the Italian Grand Prix. He wants to build a cushion. Piquet goes through to complete his 25th lap, 14 seconds behind the new race leader, and just about a wheel's length ahead of the 3rd place man Nigel Mansell. What a magnificent scrap.
Yes, and remember that this really is the battle for the lead, because although Senna heads them on the road, he of course is yet to make his pit stop. He's leaving it surprisingly late, unless he's going to try and do the race on one set of cars, because before half distance is about certainly the half-life of the tyres, because of course the cars are heavier in the first half of the race. And Piquet still defending his position. Well, if we can't get races involving the whole field or even a group of cars, at least the two Williamses are giving us a good battle between themselves.
Marvellous, because one of the alleged reasons for Honda leaving the Williams team at the end of this year is that they were angry about the fact that Nigel Mansell beat Piquet, their favoured man, at the British Grand Prix this year and the French Grand Prix, when they wanted Piquet to have the maximum World Championship points in order to see him take the honour at the end of the season. Now, are there any orders between Piquet and Mansell in this race because of that situation? No, there are not. These two will each be determined to beat the other. Senna is leading now on lap 27, yet to make his tyre stop. He is 12.2 seconds ahead of Piquet, who there has got Mansell right behind him. In fourth position, it's Thierry Boutsen, 9 seconds behind the battle you are looking at now. And in fifth place, it is Gerhard Berger. Sixth is Stefan Johansson, and seventh is Theo Farmi.
And the two Williamses are really flying. They're lapping a good second a lap quicker than anybody else on the circuit. And I am surprised that we haven't yet seen Senna into the pits for tyres.
Well, irrespective of what you think of the politics and the reasons or non-reasons for Honda deciding to leave Williams, one must wonder whether they're doing the wisest thing. When you see, hey, look at that, that was Mansell off the course there, over the curve, in his efforts to get out of the Ascari bend right on the tail of Piquet.
Yeah, so this is the opportunity that Mansell would be looking for with two slower cars in front, a bit of traffic. He will hope that a little bit of interference would be able to help him pass.
And you're looking at yet another scrap, the scrap between Boutsen for fourth and Berger, who is in fifth position, or you were, because we're back now with this really titanic scrap between the two Williams superstars. Double world champion Nelson Piquet, yet to be world champion, who so nearly made it last year, Nigel Mansell. They're coming up now to the second Benetton, and that'll be Theo Farmi. And they are going to have midfield and tail enders problems to get through them. Senna leading 12.5 seconds, and Senna is really extending the life of his tyres as Piquet goes through and passes Christian Danner in the Zach speed, who immediately tucks in behind the Brazilian, much, I'm sure, to the irritation of Nigel Mansell, who wanted a quick run out of the Ascari bend. He will have to get past Christian Danner. Look for the Williams coming out to the left of the Zach speed, and he did so. Down to the Parabolica at the end of lap 28 in this 50-lap race. Senna leading, Piquet second, Mansell third. Here is Boutsen in fourth place, followed right behind him by Berger in fifth position. Michele Alboreto has long since disappeared from his own Italian Grand Prix in the Ferrari as Boutsen comes out of the Parabolica, and it would seem that Berger cannot do anything about him. It would seem at the moment that Mansell, unless he's prepared to prejudice his fuel consumption by using that go faster button on the steering wheel, which gives him increased turbo boost, is going to have to give best to Piquet, at least for the time being. But there's a long way to go. Lap 29 this is. It's a 50-lap race, reduced by 1 lap because of that aborted start, and they were not allowed to refuel, so they were given a lap short to make up for that. And now Mansell has got to start the whole laborious business again of inching up on Nelson Piquet in order to be able to get into a drafting position as Piquet comes up to take Capelli in the Leighton House March, and he is in 18th position. Leading the 3.5 litre category now is Philippe Alliot, who is in 14th place. Martin Brundle is up to 9th position. Piquet is past Capelli, Mansell is past Capelli, and Capelli has got right behind him Jonathan Palmer, who is in 19th position. Here are Boutsen and Berger taking Ghinzani in the Megatron-powered Ligier. round the parabolic. Piquet is now 1.5 seconds ahead of Mansell, and that is any Chiva out of the Italian Grand Prix.
Well, I suppose one must speculate that Senna may be trying to go the whole race on one set of tyres, because he's well overdue to have made his tyre stop, or certainly to get the best use of the two sets, because he's well over half distance, and it may be with their active suspension that they're getting a better tyre wear, and he certainly doesn't seem to be struggling for grip at the moment, because he has responded and is lapping in the low 28s, or shown he's capable of when there's no traffic, and that means that his tyres are still holding up very well indeed.
Yes, Ayrton Senna, who said the night before last how much he was looking forward to partnering Alain Prost in the 1988 McLaren Honda team, is making the most of his Honda power at the present moment, leading the Italian Grand Prix. And here come Boutsen and Berger. Whatever the problem was with Boutsen, which slowed him up and lost him that second place, seems to have been overcome, because he's keeping ahead of Gerhard Berger. And on lap 30, in this 50-lap race, it is Ayrton Senna, and we wait for the second place man to go through. Well, Piquet is actually starting to catch Senna now. The gap is down to 8.3 seconds. Nigel Mansell, with that new lap record of 1 minute 27.5, is in third position. Fourth place, Thierry Boutsen, just ahead of Gerhard Berger, and as you can see, there is the confirmation. 8.4 seconds to the nearest 10th between Piquet, number 6 there in the Williams Honda, well on course for 6 World Championship points, to make it at worst at the present moment 7 second places in the 11 races he will have driven in. A quite incredible achievement. And there you see the blue flag. Usually they wave the flag to indicate to somebody that someone behind him is wanting to pass, and the white flag indicated that there was a service vehicle on the course. Now, I can only assume that that would be an ambulance, so we better keep our eyes peeled, as Berger is swarming all over Boutsen now, and as Boutsen comes up to take Martin Brundle and does so. And Berger is separated from Boutsen by Brundle and Inzana.
He got a bit of a chop there. Of course, his turbo power carried him through all right, and they're really having a tremendous scrap. Boutsen and Berger, they've been at it hammer and tongs ever since they came out of the pits together.
Yeah, and I think those flags were perhaps incorrectly given, because I deduced that the vehicle on the course was Franco Farini, who you will have seen touring in the Acela, presumably to retire. But now on lap 32 out of 50, Ayrton Senna still leads, but by a diminishing margin, which indicates to me that his tyres are going off, because Nelson Piquet is cutting into the advantage that Senna has. It's now down to 5.5 seconds. There's 12 is Senna, 6 is Piquet second, 5 is Mansell third, 20 is Boutsen fourth, 28 is Berger fifth, number 2 is Johansson in 6th position. And there goes Berger. There's the lapped car, and Martin Brundle, going better than he has gone in a Grand Prix for a long time, is up into 8th position and will conceivably finish in the points for the second time this season. He was in 5th place at San Marino, but lap 32, Senna leads, Piquet's catching him, Mansell is just behind Piquet, Boutsen is 4th, Berger is 5th, Johansson is in 6th position, and now Senna is maintaining his lead. It's over 6 seconds.
He dropped back a bit before because he was held up in traffic. In fact, he's still lapping very quickly indeed. Mansell has dropped back a bit from his teammate Nelson Piquet. He's now some 6 seconds behind him. But I wonder if Piquet has taken a chance by using a little bit of extra boost to get away, and whether he'll be able to maintain that pace for the rest of the race, or whether he'll have to slow down and hope that Mansell hasn't got too much in hand. It's definitely a cat and mouse game with the boost knob.
I should point out, of course, that Nelson Piquet is disciplined enough and mature enough to know that he doesn't have to win this race. It would be very nice for him to win it for the 4th time, having won in 1980, 83 and 86. But if he had another 2nd place and ahead of Nigel Mansell, that would be very nice. Thank you for his World Championship chances.
No, I think he really needs to win it, Larry, because remember, he'll be dropping 2nd places if he finishes, and he does not want another 2nd place. Although he's 15 points in front of Mansell, that is not a true situation, because Nelson is very close to having to discard 6 points at a time. And Nigel, of course, has got plenty of more races to score in, and even if and when he does have to start dropping points, remember that you're only allowed to count your 11 best results in the championship. Only your 11 best results out of 16 are allowed to count for your points, and Mansell firstly has plenty more races in which he can score totally, and then when he does, if and when he does have to start dropping, he's got a 6th place for 1 point to drop, whereas as soon as Nelson starts dropping, he drops 6 at a time. So Nelson will be very keen to take 9 points here.
You saw Ayrton Senna, you saw a flash behind him of Piquet, but look at this, because Berger is ahead of Boutsen, and you saw it happen, and that means to say that the Ferrari with the Austrian at the wheel is now up into 4th place. A marvellous fight for that position between the Ferrari and the Benetton, and meantime Senna continues to astound me with the way he is keeping his tyres intact. He is now on his 34th lap, as Berger, followed by Boutsen, goes into the Ascari bend.
And it does look to me as if Senna's driving a very clever race indeed, tactically, because the speed that he's now showing, he's now lapping in under 1:28, and the speed with which he's lapping now suggests to me that he was being very, very conservative for the first 15 or even 20 laps of the race, in order to protect his tyres. And a big cheer went up from the crowd then underneath us as Berger went past in 4th place, having got past Thierry Boutsen. But I'm quite sure now that Senna is not intending to stop for tyres, and by looking after them so carefully in the early part of the race, at the moment he seems to have done himself a very clever trick and out-fumbled the others, because he's maintaining his lead. He's 6.5 seconds ahead of Piquet still, and appears to be able to pretty much match Piquet for speed. Piquet, of course, would love to get a result whereby he could catch and pass Senna and leave Mansell behind in 3rd place, because that really would be very significant for his championship, because I'm sure, from Nelson's point of view, Mansell is the man that he most fears. But remember, of course, that Senna is not so far behind Piquet either. He's ahead of Mansell in the championship at the moment.
Lap 35, Ayrton Senna goes through again, another lap without a pit stop, and he's magnificently maintaining that lead at 6.5 seconds. It's a whisker over now, 6.6 seconds, as you look at Berger having taken Alio, who is in 14th position, who's been lapped twice. And the race order on lap 36 is Ayrton Senna leading Nelson Piquet by 6 seconds. Nigel Mansell in 3rd position. Then in 4th position, Gerhard, Berger being chased very hard by the 5th place man, Thierry Boutsen. In 6th place, Stefan Johansson. 7th is Teo Fabi. 8th and lapped is Martin Brundle. 9th is Ginzani, who appears to be keeping the Megatron engine together in the race. 10th is Christian Danner in the 2nd Zach Speed, so they're both going well. 11th in the 2nd Ligier, so they're both going well, is Rene Arnoux. 12th and lapped twice is Nakajima. 13th now is Philippe Alliot, who is leading the 3.5 litre category. And there you see the Marlborough pit with Alain Prost, who is totally out of this race, and therefore I think totally out of the World Championship. He rejoins the race, but Alain Prost is not going to finish in the points in the Italian Grand Prix, and that destroys any chances or hopes he may have had of being world champion for the third year in succession. He said that rather ruefully after the Austrian Grand Prix, but this really does confirm it. And now you look at Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. Piquet has gone through, Senna of course has gone through, and Mansell is dropping back now.
Yes, and Mansell's engine sounded a little bit rough to me as he went past, and that would be consistent with the fact that he's dropping back quite sharply from the battle up front, which is now between the two Brazilian drivers, with Senna skillfully, manfully holding on to that 6.5 second lead, and certainly at the moment seemingly capable of covering Piquet's every move.
It is beginning to look more and more as though the 1987 World Championship is going to be between the two Brazilians, Nelson Piquet and Ayrton Senna. We have tended to forget about Ayrton Senna in concentrating on the man you're looking at, Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet, and their rivalry. But Senna has been astoundingly reliable this year. 2 wins at Monaco and Detroit, 2 second places, 2 third places, a fourth, a fifth, and only 2 failures to finish. And of course, as James has pointed out, there is Senna, the race leader. It is the best 11 results from the 16 races that count. And Senna, if he wins here, will close the gap between himself and Nelson Piquet by 3 points, and every point is going to help as the season draws towards its conclusion.
So what is remarkable is what a different driver Senna is this year to the man he was last year. Last year the Lotus was probably more competitive for speed, and that's a new lap record for Nelson Piquet, but he had a quicker car, and with inexperience he wasted a lot of races with mistakes and over-enthusiasm, going too fast at the wrong moment, damaging tyres and things like that. And this year he seems to have changed completely. All the lessons have... I criticised him for being a slow learner last year, but they all seem to have sunk in now. And by picking up points and being clever and thinking well, he is putting himself in with a very powerful shout for the World Championship, despite the fact that his car is not really a match for speed as for the Williamses.
Well, now, how is Senna doing now as he goes through to complete another lap with the Williams coming into view? The gap is 5.6 seconds. So there is Nigel Mansell in 3rd position, and that is the Lotus coming towards us of Nakajima. There is Berger, followed by Boutsen. They are respectively 4th and 5th. Well, Piquet has taken 1 second out of Senna's lead, as out of the Minardi gets Adrian Campos to retire yet again. The little Spaniard has failed to finish in any of the 11 Grand Prix of this year.
Well, Mansell now over 20 seconds behind Nelson Piquet and starting to fall back towards Gerhard Berger. At the moment, Berger is some 9 seconds behind Mansell. Certainly lapping quicker than he is.
Yes, race order, lap 39. Senna, 5.6 seconds ahead of Piquet. Lotus Honda ahead of Williams Honda. Nigel Mansell is out of the reckoning unless either Senna or Piquet hit problems. When I say out of the reckoning, I mean from the point of view of a win. Then in 4th position, Gerhard Berger, with Boutsen in 5th place, and you can see that the gap between them is some 5 seconds. And then a long gap before Stefan Johansson appears in 6th position, ahead of 7th place man Theo Fabi. There's only about a second between them, and the leader Senna has lapped everybody up to Fabi, who is 7th, and Piquet is the fastest man with a lap record.
And it's a real fast and furious battle up front, because Senna is, as I say, just about covering Piquet's moves. He's well into the 27 himself. And they're absolutely storming away from the others. So it's quite clear that Senna has not got a tyre problem as yet, but he may begin to struggle in the last half dozen laps of the race, when I would have imagined his tyres will be quite near the end of their life.
And you see how Gerhard Berger there in the Ferrari got ahead of Nakajima, a bit of demon late braking, and he surged ahead at the Rettifilo, clipped both the curbs, gave the suspension a colossal clout, as he does there at the Rogia. And once again, unfortunately, as we look at Nakajima's car, we're not able to give you TV pictures. The camera is on the car, but it's clearly not working, or the producer's choosing not to use it. But either way, we're not getting any pictures. And on lap 40, out of 50, so very little distance to go now from the whole race. Ayrton Senna, with a superb tyre-preserving drive in his actively suspended Lotus, is leading, but by a decreasing margin all the time. It's down to 4.6 seconds now.
Yes, Piquet is managing to edge closer. With just 10 more laps to go, it's going to be touch and go as to whether he can catch Senna. But if you want to catch him, he's got to get past him. And it may just be that the man who has been more conservative with fuel, has conserved a bit more fuel for the final sprint at the end, could well make the difference between first and second in the race.
Philippe Alliot off, and he's done it again, because Alliot was leading the 3.5 litre class, as he has done several times in the past, and it looked like his Gallic temperament has got the better of him. In the Lola, he has gone off, and that means to say that Philippe Streff is now into the lead of the 3.5 litre category in 14th position, ahead of Ivan Capelli, who is 16th overall. Jonathan Palmer has been lapped by them and is in 3rd position. As you look at race leader Ayrton Senna, and Nelson Piquet is still 4.5 seconds behind Senna on now the 41st lap. So it looks as though, on the 42nd lap, my apologies, so it looks as though Ayrton Senna has got enough of a cushion to be able to stave off his Brazilian countryman. And Alain Prost now back into the reckoning. Look at that, 1:26.8. Prost won't be in the points, but he wants the fastest lap.
Yes, of course, he would probably be able to, having lost so many laps in the pits, he'd be able to use a bit more boost in order to achieve that. It would appear to me that McLaren's are just having a bit of a testing session out there. So, on Nigel Mansell, I'm glad to say, appears to have responded to the challenge from behind, and it has speeded up a little bit and is now holding the gap to Berger, who's chasing him in 4th place, is holding that gap at over 10 seconds. It's actually 11.5 seconds at the moment, and Mansell put in a couple of quick laps to remove any delusions of 3rd place that might be running through Berger's mind at the moment.
Well, Riccardo Patrese in the Brabham, the man who's tipped for the 2nd Williams seat next year, out of the Italian Grand Prix. De Cesaris is out of the race. Farini is out of the race. Comparatively few retirements, but unfortunately they include Derek Warwick and Eddie Cheever. Teo Fami is still going well, but Alex Cathy yet again has had to retire. Campos has had to retire. His teammate Nannini, however, is going strong. And both the Ligiers are still running. Michele Alboreto out of the race, and of course Philippe Alliot has retired. And now we are on lap 43 in this 50-lap Italian. There are the runners. Number 12, Senna leads. Number 6, Piquet second. Number 5, Mansell third. Number 28, Berger is fourth. Number 20, Boutsen, is 5th. Number 2, Stefan Johansson, is 6th. And Fabi is in 7th place. Ghinzani is 8th, but has been lapped. So that's good news for the Ligier team. At least he is still running, as is his teammate, René Arnoux. And you now look at Ghinzani, who is 8th, being lapped by race leader Ayrton Senna, and he is on his 43rd lap, and off goes race leader Ayrton Senna. That's blown it. He rejoins, but his tyres will be covered in dirt and muck. So now Senna's cool is going to be well and truly tested. Has the car been affected? That was a quite superb recovery. The crowd is going bananas because now Piquet is in the lead. Nelson Piquet has taken the lead with that off of Ayrton Senna.
Yes, and that was really terrible mistake by Ayrton Senna, admittedly under maximum pressure from Nelson Piquet, and he was frankly very lucky indeed to be able to keep the car moving and drive through that sand, because they normally get very seriously stuck. In fact, it was a pretty skillful thing to do. He just managed to keep it going, so he still got second place very comfortably there, but a really unfortunate error, and that really has handed it a bit to Piquet on the plate, and I can be quite sure that Nigel Mansell will not thank Ayrton Senna for that when he sees the recording of the race later. He'll be very disappointed, because it did look as if Senna was going to be able to hang on to that lead and contain Piquet to another 6 points, thereby keeping Mansell's hopes. And here we are, we see it again. He's down the inside, and he gets it all skew-whiff under braking there. Just pressing on a little bit too hard with the back markers, with the pressure from Piquet behind him, and that was the result. But as I say, he was pretty lucky to keep the car moving and to be able to get out of that without getting totally bogged down.
And as a result of that, Ayrton Senna is now 8.6 seconds behind race leader Nelson Piquet on lap 45 out of 50. And I cannot imagine that even the brilliance of the young Brazilian that you are looking at now, having made a masterly recovery, as off goes Jonathan Palmer and pushes Nigel Mansell onto the grass. But Nigel Mansell, with a bit of rally crossing, manages to keep on the track, back on the track. But Nigel Mansell, just as he wouldn't be thanking Ayrton Senna, will certainly not be thanking Jonathan Palmer for that, because that has increased the gap between himself and the two Brazilians in front of him. And on lap 45, it's Nelson Piquet leading Ayrton Senna. Nigel Mansell well behind in 3rd position. In 4th position, it's Gerhard Berger. 5th is Thierry Boutsen. In 6th position is still Stefan Johansson. Now, there's the gap. There's Piquet. There's Ghinzani. And there is Ayrton Senna, who is passing Streff's Tyrrell, which was striking sparks from the front. So, has he broken the suspension? But now I'll give you the gap. Piquet goes past me now, and Senna goes past me at now 5.5 seconds. Senna is catching Piquet. There are still 5 laps to go. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that Ayrton Senna can catch Piquet, but will he get past him? I doubt it.
Piquet had eased up anyway. He's got plenty in hand, and he'll be well aware of Senna's progress, and he'll just turn it up whenever he wants. He can lap a little bit quicker than he's doing at the moment.
Well, this race is far from over. There is the leader. Now look for the yellow Lotus Honda in the background. There it is. The leader, Piquet, is on his 46th lap. 50-lap race. Senna 2nd, Mansell 3rd, Berger 4th, Boutsen 5th, Johansson 6th. But but all the interest is at the front. And you can see the gap is not quite as close as it looks through television, because it has a foreshortening effect. But the gap is certainly decreasing, and Senna is certainly catching Piquet, as Piquet in the Williams Honda exits the parabolica. There is Senna doing the same thing. Piquet crosses the line now. And do my ears deceive me, or is Piquet's Williams sounding a bit rough? It's 3.8 seconds. I do believe that Piquet's Williams Honda is flagging. And there is no doubt at all that Senna, that you look at now in second place and who led the race, is catching Piquet hand over fist.
Yes, it could well be that in his excitement of getting away from Mansell, Piquet went a little bit ahead of his fuel allowance and is now having to pay for that. And of course, he was also having that big chase of Senna earlier, but certainly Senna is getting fairly closer. Thought that Senna must be pretty much on the limit for fuel. It's a very high consumption here, and they're all to work on the boost very carefully in this race and to judge it very carefully.
3 laps to go at the end of this one, and look at Ayrton Senna from Brazil catching Nelson Piquet from Brazil. There is no doubt about the fact that Senna is going to be on the tail of Nelson Piquet, 3 times Italian Grand Prix winner, very shortly, as they go down to the Rettifilo. In 3rd position is still Mansell, 4th is still Berger. And well, the crowd at Rome is watching the giant television screen rapt with interest, because it is a rivetingly exciting Italian Grand Prix, with Nelson Piquet on lap 48 out of 50 being caught by Ayrton Senna, who went off earlier on, and it's quite possible that Senna can catch and pass his fellow Brazilian.
And they are really racing, because Ayrton Senna has gone under 1:27. His previous lap was a 26.9. Piquet has responded by dropping back down into the 27s, but the 2 Brazilians are absolutely flying.
Senna passes his teammate Nakajima into the Ascari bend, the left, the right, then the left again. That is Nakajima you're looking at now. We can see them come down to the parabolica, and this will be to complete lap 48 and to start the 49th and last lap but 1. Well, if Senna gets past Piquet, it's going to be a miracle, because Piquet can make it very difficult indeed, even when Senna gets on his tail, if he does. Over the line goes Piquet, over the line goes Senna. The gap is 2.5 seconds, and I think that is enough, with 2 laps to go, including the one they're on, for Piquet to hold the lead, just.
Yes, Piquet has now been able to stem the tide, as it were. Senna fired up, I should think, with adrenaline pumping round him after that excursion, and with the chase going on. Flying over the curve there, a little bit untidy, but hardly blame him for that this late in the Grand Prix when he's giving it 105%.
Race order, lap 49, 1 lap to go at the end of this one. Nelson Piquet leads, Senna is second, and you see the 2 of them. Mansell is third and out of contention. Berger is in 4th place, Boutsen is 5th, Stefan Johansson is 6th, Theo Fabi is 7th, and only those 7 are on the same lap. Ginzani is 8th, Dana is in 9th position, Arnoux is 10th, Danini is 11th, Nakajima is in 12th position, Streff in 13th place leads the 3.5 litre category. There is race leader Nelson Piquet exiting the parabolica to complete his 49th lap and start his 50th. It must surely be victory for Piquet, in which case he will have made it his 4th win. Victory in 1980 and 83 and 86. He's just rocketed round and managed to stave off Ayrton Senna despite the younger Brazilian's efforts.
Yes, but what a performance they both had to put up. They're both lapping in the late 126s, and at long last, we've waited a long time for a real battle at the end of the Grand Prix this year, but we've got one now. And Piquet, so long as he's all right for fuel, remember they're very marginal on fuel, there could be a bit of coughing and spluttering, they've still got to make it to the line. Any cough on low fuel that Piquet does could still allow Senna to get past. So into the second chicane, just one more corner to go. And Piquet has got it at the moment, but he's got to pray that there's no misfire from the engine as he sputters for the last drops of fuel. Tremendous battle we've had between the two Brazilians, and really quite a good race.
Nelson Piquet is going to win the Italian Grand Prix by the closest margin that we have had this year, and a magnificent victory, but the checkered flag has not gone out. The checkered flag, there's the official who should have shown the checkered flag. Now, this is an incredible development. The checkerboard showed that they were on their last lap, but the checkered flag is now being shown, and a hoot of derision from the crowd. As in Austria, the finish line official has failed to notice the winner crossing the line, but with jeers and shouts and catcalls from the crowd, there is Nakajima's Lotus run out of fuel. It's Senna! Senna!
Yeah, he crossed the line though, and he was back right off as he went over the line, so Senna judged his fuel right, and I have to say, it was Ayrton Senna was the sensation of the Italian Grand Prix, although he didn't win it, and rather sadly, possibly threw away a win. I thought he drove a marvellous race. It was brilliant tactically. He out-fumbled the others by going very gently in the early part, saving his tyres, and then not having to do a pit stop, and was absolutely flying in the second half of the race. And it's the first time we've seen the Williams Hondas really threatened for quite a long time by any other type of car. Great drive by Senna.
Yeah, it's quite incredible because Senna ran out of fuel. Gerhard Berger has crossed the line running out of fuel. Thierry Boutsen has finished in 5th place, and Stefan Johansson has finished 6th. So, race order at the end of a truly dramatic Italian Grand Prix. A superb 3rd victory of the year, and query a World Championship clinching victory for Nelson Piquet in the Williams Honda. Ahead of, in 2nd place, Ayrton Senna in the Lotus Honda. 3rd, Nigel Mansell in the Williams Honda. 4th is Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. 5th is Thierry Boutsen, and 6th is Stefan Johansson. And that means to say that Piquet now leads the World Championship with 63 points to Senna's 2nd place 49, and Mansell 3rd with 43.
3rd win in 4 races for Nelson Piquet, and let's show you confirmation of his position in the World Championship now. The next race is in Portugal in 2 weeks' time, and he's got a pretty healthy looking lead there.